It's part 7 and you're really starting to get the hang of this thing. Mockups go by a lot of different names depending on where you are. It might be called a comp or a design or a screen or whatever, but it's generally the unit of value that your employer or client thinks that they are paying you for. So it's really important to be good at mockups. But look, there's no such thing as a perfect mockup, and in this lesson, it's all about combining our auto layouts and everything we've learned so far with components and variables and shapes and putting something all together. Take as much time as you need on this lesson, practice it, practice it, practice it, because this is like the skill that will take the most time to master and needs the most patience for yourself, okay? So cut yourself some slack and let's go in there and have a little bit of fun. Okay, we're rounding the bend on all of our skills here. We understand how to make objects and properties, shapes, move them around, apply auto layouts, copy and paste styles, use components and variables, and we're going to do all of this in the name of creating a single screen for a media player app and playing some music. And we're going to do it in the vein of Spotify or Apple Music. So I'm going to start by just making a new design file so you can see the process start to finish and see how I apply some of those things and how you might apply them as well. First, I'm going to make a frame. Well, first I'm going to name the file. How about that? P7 Mockups. And I'm going to get just an iPhone frame. I use iPhone. I know a lot of people love Android. And I'm going to call it Media Player. And when I'm starting off, I might just start with a really rough, like essentially pen and paper version of what I want, which is like, I want a back button, I want like maybe a chunky play button, I want like a forward, I'm going to like rough out that I want sort of a media player there, maybe I want a big old piece of art, and then there's going to be some top stuff, there's going to be a little space taken up by the operating system, and then I probably maybe want some controls for like skip and repeat and shuffle. And this is really already enough to keep us pretty busy. So let's see if we can dive in and create this. So using that as my draft, I'm going to start coming in and sort of crafting a few of these buttons. What do I need for play? I'm going to need a triangle. So I'm going to grab a polygon here, hold down Shift, and make it nice and dark. I'm going to rotate it. And this is always a tough one. You want to optically center this so that it's not, if you center it, you see it's going to center this box and give you some extra space, which isn't totally great. And and all these sizes are totally willy-nilly. So why don't we make these real sizes? How about we do 64? 64, that's good. 96? That's probably a more reasonable size, I think. And then right here, I'm going to put this in a frame. I'm going to right-click and frame the selection so that it is confined. I can center this triangle inside of its own frame. Yeah. So now I can actually center. Boop, boop. And get a center triangle. Oh my gosh, how terrible does that look? Terrible. And that's a little hard, so why don't we smooth up that play a little bit. And then I can do something similar where it's really a triangle and a rectangle, right? Will be next. Round that off a little. Now some of what you're seeing here is icon design at its finest. No, this is just like me going through and making these kind of quickly so you can see how these things come together. And I want this to be, what did we say? There's 64, so maybe it's going to be 56. Yeah, that's too big. So why don't we try 32? Same thing. We'll do a 32 here. And there's no right or wrong order to do this in. Luckily, there's some fun tools to help me here with a transform, like I can flip and hit Shift H to do that, and boom, it's pointing the other way. And then I'm going to just kind of center these up. And let's start turning these into components that I can reuse. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to create a component. So now this is the original. I'm going to do the same thing. Command Option K. Create 2 more components here. And then I'm starting to build my components out here. Copy in a version of it. Let's make sense of these numbers too. Let's get them nice and even. 12. Bring the corner radius in so it's not, nothing's going to be pointy and hurt our fingers with how pointy it is. And then maybe put a big circle here. And this is going to be our playhead. I'm going to take this and Command D, duplicate. We're going to have some progress. And that's the start. Turn that into a component. And there's different ways to do this. Sometimes I name as I go, but let's try button play. And I like this naming strategy of going generic, back, button forward. I like going generic to more specific because this way, when you're searching for a component, you can just search for the simplest version of it. And you can just search for button and know that you're going to get anything that is a button. Now this is progress bar. And then we need a few of these controls. So let's just make this right now a play control or CTRL 1. And we're going to add a few properties of here. I'm going to set it to an auto layout. Go next. And I don't have icons right now, so I'm just literally going to just type inside here. We're going to do a repeat. Why don't we do a shuffle? Repeat, shuffle. What else? We'll do a lyrics. These are really terrible looking at the moment, but again, I'm just kind of roughing out. I'm taking repeat, shuffle, and lyrics and just dragging over copies of them. Now, I'm definitely missing some elements that I just need to add in, like artist name, track title. And then I probably also need to add in to my progress bar some additional time, right? So 0, 0, 0. And let's call it 410. Whoa. Sometimes things get away from you. No. Please stop turning that into an emoji. You can hit escape to get out of that. Then I'm going to make a new component that is 2 timestamps in this playhead. And I'm going to add them to an auto layout and call it full playhead. I'll put that down here. Now we're adding some details, right? And trying to get this a little more dialed in. Now, this stuff is all just willy-nilly, so it's time to add some layout and make sense of it. I'm going to add an auto layout here separate these three. Auto layout here and separate these three. I'm going to add an auto layout to all three of these things. Probably need an auto layout between these two so they're aligned to each other. And then an auto layout for every element together so that they're all aligned. And now I've got a ton of basically rules applied so that this stuff actually works the way I want it to. And instead of like setting widths and stuff, I'm setting rules. So here the first rule is the whole screen's got to have padding. In this case, let's do 24. See how it didn't respect it? So this actually has to be set to fill. This actually has to be set to fill as well. And then this also has to be set to fill, but that's something I can do at this component level. Fill container. Hi there, my name's Fill Container. Okay, that's looking right, but our circle got squished. Why? Well, because he shouldn't be part of it. So instead of scale, let's make him center. And instead of scale, why don't we make him left? Put that right here. Or I like the idea of kind of pulling this back so that it matches. Now whatever this width is here, in this case 345, I can make this component reflect it. So now I want to get a little bit more organized, right? Where I'm going to put a container over here and call this components. And since we have 24 left and right, let's double it, 24 times 2 for our top and bottom. And so now we've got a pleasing sort of 2-to-1 ratio with what's going on with our padding. Now the typography isn't quite right. Let's start dialing some of that in. So this auto layout needs to fill its container. And now that I'm seeing this, it looks like our artwork isn't sized correctly. So let's just drag that out until it's nice and aligned with everything. And our artist is going to be, geez, let's go a little larger, 17 point. And the track title, we're going to do even bigger, maybe 24. And we'll put that in bold. So now we have an artist name, a track title, we've got controls, and things are starting to get a little floaty. So you can see here, 43 is just a number that it kind of chose based on the spacing of everything. So I can put auto in, and that's automatically going to spread everything out based on how much kind of space and size it has. Or I can take this right here, and I can say this is not actually hug. This is going to fill the container, and it's going to be bottom aligned. There's a lot of ways to move this layout around, but this is working at the moment, so I'll leave it. Now I just so happen to have generated an image that we can use as our album artwork here. And these kind of zen lines, these earthly kind of lines, I like the tone there. And let's set up a border radius. And you might be like, hey Ryan, why don't we start using variables or something right away? And I don't think I'm ready for that quite yet. In fact, I want to have this stuff a little bit more kind of locked down in terms of how I want it to look before I start setting any of that stuff up. But what I do want to kind of add an overall style here, I'm going to pretend this is the iOS home button. It looks something like this, right? Just kind of transforming it in. And I'm going to make this whole thing have a bigger border radius, so it's kind of cropping to our phone space. Let me change the background color so you get a little more contrast. You can see. Actually, hey, why don't we sample some of our image here, and you can see what's going on a little bit better. now I really want like more of this interface to feel light and white. So some of this stuff, again, is going to be things that you make decisions on based on like how you have your own taste. But I want something to feel kind of like glowy and like this, the whole thing is really taken over by this image. So I'm going to copy my artwork here and I'm going to make a new copy. And I'm going to try and get it right inside this canvas and blow it up. So it's almost like the program, and let me show you what I'm doing here. This is the same as right clicking and say send to back. So you can just use the left bracket on your keyboard. And then let's build up, stack some properties on this fill. So on this fill, I'm going to add some darkness to it. So I'm going to add maybe even 50%. And then I'm going to, for effects, blur the whole layer. And I'm going to blur it by a bunch. Let's say 64. So you can see now, like that's really kind of blurred out and harder to see and kind of toned back, to be honest with you. And that's a little bit what I'm looking for. I might go further up on the darkness and even just make it a gray as opposed to a full black. I'm going to get rid of this for now because we'll bring in the actual elements of everything later. And this, we can bring in the real stuff later. And now I have this choice of like how I'm going to build these components. One thing I can do is take the whole section and make the section's background something closer to the background that they're actually going to see. And then maybe for these 3 buttons, I can select, use this target and select their fill. And maybe now these are dark buttons. Go back to this dark gray, and I'm going to make it a little bit see-through. And let's add a couple of effects on here. So for them, let's do an inner shadow. And again, there's no right or wrong here, right? I'm just trying to take something that's in my mind and bring it out. And, you know, maybe this is right, maybe it's not right. I want it even darker, maybe more see-through, which means these 3 things, you guys are going to have to get lighter for me. And speaking of light, maybe I'll take this and I'll Command Option C and I'll paste that look onto this bar. I think the inner shadow isn't doing us any favors anymore. And let's thin this out. It looks a little thick in here. So selecting both things, let's take it down to 6. So cut it in half. This guy, also make him white. And then maybe here I might select, you know, one of the colors that's inside of the album artwork itself. I like the idea of, you know, let's brighten it up a little bit. And let's get crazy. Let's go and make a drop shadow. And we'll make it so that it's not offset at all. And really, funny thing about drop shadows is when they're not offset and they're not a dark color, they actually kind of a glow, aren't they? So we can kind of make this, we're starting to get a little Tron over here with this. Okay, let's make those white. You know, and I don't know if white is the exact right thing to do here, but I'm just playing with things. So maybe we'll take that and get rid of the glow on the artist name, and then we'll make the artist name and track title center aligned. We're starting to get there. This is kind of looking like a thing, but I think our basic font isn't quite doing it. So here's a font I've been digging. Ooh, it's not very good as an interface font. But I like the idea of picking something that is... Geez. Looking at some of these, they are not it, huh? Man, maybe it's good old-fashioned Baskerville. Whew, I love Libre Franklin as well. Let's get this a little bit more petite. 13. And maybe... Let's give some fake data. So this glow effect, I'm starting to kind of be into it, so I'm going to apply it to some of these things. Oh, and maybe we just had a happy accident where we're taking and we've just made completely abstract the concept of play and next. And maybe that's okay, you know, like perhaps like as we look at these things, we're just deciding like, hey, we're gonna get a little crazier than we typically get. It's like, how round can you make it before it sort of doesn't do it anymore? And now looking at this, I have the urge to make the play button super, super big. I also have the urge that this auto layout probably shouldn't be so far away. So I kind of want to make this center aligned and kind of just bring these things a little bit closer to each other. And then these, we'll have to figure out what we want to do around those buttons. And there's plenty of icons and buttons out there where this is like easy to go and just, you don't have to make your own icons. You can just be going and creating something. Now, one of my favorite little tricks that Apple likes to use is a drop shadow that is actually just a blurred version of the layer. So we're going to ignore the auto layout and send this back inside this auto layout. And then what we're going to do is apply a layer blur to this. I'm going to blur it out. And then just kind of put it back there. Maybe tap 7 or something so it's semi-opaque. And then let's add a little contrast. Just like a half a point of dark stroke. Or even light stroke around this artwork. To just make it pop out a little bit. So you can sort of see the edge of it as it goes. Now I like this, but this thing is way too cramped, so let's add a little up and down padding to it. Let's make the whole thing hug the content. Let's make everything at least some amount apart. And now I'm going to go and grab some community resources to fill in some iOS Chrome at the top and bottom. Now, do I think this is like a particularly amazing design? The answer is no. But that isn't the point of what we're doing. What we're trying to do is show you how you can take all of the sort of pieces that we've been putting together and construct something that feels unique and feels like something that you might have created. Bringing in the sides, and let's just make the back nice and dark. I'm even fading it out a little bit more. I just don't feel the need to have it be so exact. Go to 120. Yeah, we're just kind of looking for the colors, the textures, that kind of feeling. We're going to settle on that. I'm probably going to further play with this and refine exactly what we've got going on here, but I like the idea of building something just for fun, just to learn and just to get a sense of how this stuff all fits together when you do make it fit together, because I think building on all of your skills and learning exactly how this stuff works is actually pretty fun and exciting, and it starts to give you some sense of how this stuff might actually start to work as it all comes together. And you can see all the pieces now with blurring and positioning and auto layout, how this stuff starts to look like each other. There we go. A little orange, little orange. And these buttons really aren't anything, but you're kind of getting the idea. And this was, I don't know how many minutes. It's not like my favorite design of all time, but what it is a start, and it can start the conversation and start to make you feel a little bit more comfortable with what's going on and finding your way around a piece of design software. You can see now it's all objects, shapes, and properties all stacked together, and then you're starting to make components so that you can reuse them and bring them forward and make a whole bunch of screens. Now you know that we could make a dark mode and a light mode of this thing and have it be really, really easy. And there's just so many possibilities and so many ways of doing this that is really fun, really intuitive, and actually makes for a very fun version of design. And to me is like one of the reasons why I do this. Like, it makes me excited to actually play with all this stuff and see how it all might fit together. And I hope you've gotten some of that here too. Now I'm going to just sit here and have a little bit more fun and play and see how this thing feels as I continue building it and just, messing around with styles and colors and what kind of things are possible in this interface. But I think we can stop it here, and it's time for you to go and have your own adventures.